Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Senate passed President Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus stimulus package Saturday, 50-49, with not one Republican voting in favor of the bill. It includes $1,400 direct payments for individuals making under $75,000 or couples making twice that, but will be cut off for anyone making more than $80,000 or $160,000 for couples filing taxes jointly, a significantly lower cap than the House's version. The Senate also extended federal unemployment benefits at $300 a week, down from the $400 approved by the House. The legislation expands the child tax credit and provides funding for vaccine distribution, testing, as well as local governments and schools. The bill passed by the Senate does not include the $15 an hour minimum wage increase. 8 members of the Democratic caucus joined all Republicans in voting down Senator Bernie Sanders' amendment to include the minimum wage hike in the bill. West Virginia's Joe Manchin, Delaware's Chris Coons and Tom Carper, New Hampshire's Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan, Montana's John Tester, Maine's Angus King, and Arizona's Kyrsten Sinema all voted down $15 an hour. The bill will go back before the House Tuesday before heading to Biden's desk. The United States recorded nearly 4,800 COVID-19 deaths over the weekend. Daily coronavirus infections are down from January's record highs, but have plateaued at levels comparable to last summer's peak. In Arkansas, Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson is planning to end a statewide mask mandate by the end of the month. California officials are preparing to reopen baseball stadiums and amusement parks, including Disneyland, on April 1st. Here in New York, movie theaters have reopened for the first time in nearly a year, albeit with masks required and lower capacity. On Sunday, White House medical advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci warned the U.S. risks a fourth surge in cases fueled by the spread of troublesome coronavirus variants if public health measures are rolled back too quickly. A warning to our audience: the following stories contain graphic footage and descriptions of police violence. In Minnesota, jury selection opens today in the murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who was filmed killing George Floyd by kneeling on his neck for more than 9 minutes in a video since seen around the world. Over the weekend, hundreds of protesters marched to demand justice for all victims of police brutality. Minneapolis will spend at least $1 million on barbed wire fencing and barricades during the trial, with thousands of police officers and National Guard troops mobilized in the streets. George Floyd's family spoke at a news conference Saturday ahead of the trial in Houston. This is his brother, Philonise Floyd.
My brother, he was valuable. He was an asset to this family.
Yes, he was.
But for this world, he's changing it. He's a global asset now. Mm-hmm. He told me time and time, my name will ring bells all around the world. I never thought it would be just like this. You all, everybody who's watching this, understand that we will have change. You just have to be the change, and you have to force it and make the change.
In Rochester, New York, newly released footage shows a police officer tackling and pepper spraying an African-American woman who was walking with her 3-year-old daughter after the mother was accused of shoplifting. This follows another disturbing incident in January when Rochester police handcuffed and pepper sprayed a 9-year-old black girl. In a statement, the New York Civil Liberties Union responded, quote, "No police department that routinely deploys tactics designed for physical and psychological torture on black toddlers, children, and mothers has any iota of legitimacy, accountability, or trust," they said. Last month, the grand jury decided not to file charges against the Rochester police officers involved in the March 2020 death of Daniel Prude, who died from asphyxiation after officers handcuffed him while he was naked, put a hood over his head, and pushed his face into the freezing cold ground for 2 minutes while kneeling on his back. President Biden signed an executive order promoting voter access to the polls as Republican state legislators across the United States advance bills to restrict voting rights. His order came on the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, when African Americans and their allies tried to march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, demanding the right to vote. As they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, they were violently attacked by Alabama State Police, beaten with nightsticks and electric cattle prods set upon by police dogs and tear gassed. John Lewis led that march. In 2015, Democracy Now! Was in Selma for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, where I spoke with Amelia Boynton Robinson, a lifelong voting rights activist who was beaten unconscious that day in 1965. Her wheelchair was being pushed by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. She was 103 years old when we spoke. What gave you the courage that day to face those state troopers?
I was born that way. My mother was a civil rights activist back there when I was born. And I worked with her at 11 years old. I worked with her when women's suffrage became a reality.
In Senegal, at least 5 people, including a young boy, have been killed amidst days of clashes between security forces and protesters. Protests erupted last Wednesday over the arrest of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, who is expected to be a key challenger for President Macky Sall when elections take place in 3 years. Sonko's been accused of rape by a woman who worked at a massage parlor, though he's denied the charge. Protesters are also calling out the country's economic troubles and the lack of jobs and the presidency of Sall. In Equatorial Guinea, at least 20 people were killed and hundreds injured in a series of explosions near a military barracks. The blast created a chaotic scene, sending massive plumes of smoke into the air, ripping roofs off buildings as wounded people were carried away to the hospital. The blasts were caused by the negligent handling of dynamite, according to President Teodoro Obiang Nguema, who has ordered an investigation and appealed for international assistance to rebuild. In Somalia, at least 20 people were killed and 30 injured after a suicide car bomb detonated outside a restaurant near the port in the capital, Mogadishu, on Friday. The attack led to the cancellation of a protest over the indefinite postponement of elections amidst an ongoing constitutional crisis. In Burma, witnesses say 2 protesters were killed by live fire today during ongoing anti-coup protests. Burma's main labor unions have launched a general strike as mass protests and the violent crackdown on peaceful demonstrators intensify 5 weeks after the February 1st military coup. An official from the party of overthrown civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi died over the weekend while in police custody. At least 50 people have been killed since the start of protests. Soldiers have begun camping out in Rangoon hospitals and university campuses in what a local group says an effort to terrorize residents. In the Philippines, a local rights group has accused security forces of killing 9 activists during a series of raids Sunday. The raids came just 2 days after President Rodrigo Duterte ordered forces to, quote, kill and finish off communist rebels, unquote. Human rights groups say the order is part of Duterte's campaign of state terror to stifle dissent. In Switzerland, Muslim advocates are condemning the passage of a far-right proposal that bans wearing face coverings in public places. Opponents are calling the new rule sexist and Islamophobic. The far-right campaign flooded the streets with posters that read, "Stop Radical Islam and Stop Extremism," featuring a woman wearing a black niqab, a veil worn by Muslim women that covers the lower half of the face. Rights groups have vowed to challenge the new rule. Pope Francis concluded a historic 3-day tour of Iraq, becoming the first leader of the Roman Catholic Church to visit Iraq. His trip, which came amidst ongoing violence and the pandemic, included stops in Mosul and other areas decimated by Islamic State fighters. Pope Francis capped off his visit Sunday with a mass in Kurdistan's capital, Erbil.
Prego perché I membri delle varie comunità religiose
I pray that the members of the various religious communities, together with all men and women of goodwill, may work together to forge bonds of fraternity and solidarity in the service of the common good and of peace. Salam, salam, salam.
Back in the United States, California Congressmember, former House impeachment manager Eric Swalwell is suing former President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and others, quote, for the injury and destruction caused by the deadly January 6 U.S. Capitol insurrection. Swalwell says they called for the violence, then, quote, watched approvingly as the building was overrun. Calls are mounting for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to step down as new accounts of sexual harassment and workplace misconduct surface. On Saturday, 2 more former aides accused Cuomo of sexual harassment, including asking invasive personal questions and making unwanted physical contact. One of New York State's most powerful Democrats, Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, joined the chorus of calls for Cuomo to resign. In a bombshell interview with Oprah Winfrey, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry revealed shocking details about life as royals, including the racism suffered by Meghan Markle, which also extended to her unborn child when she was pregnant with their son, Archie.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
And
Who is having that conversation with you?
Meghan Markle, also known as the Duchess of Sussex, also shared she had suicidal thoughts and was unable to get help she needed from within the royal institution. Markle told Oprah Winfrey, quote, I just didn't want to be alive anymore. Today marks the 50th anniversary, an event that exposed FBI abuses and mass surveillance under former Director J. Edgar Hoover. On March 8, 1971, a group of activists broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, where they stole and later leaked documents detailing the secret COINTELPRO, that's counterintelligence program, to monitor, infiltrate, and disrupt social and political movements. In 2014, Democracy Now! Spoke with 3 members of the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI just after they made their identities public for the first time. Keith Forsyth, who served as designated lockpicker during the caper, was hoping to speed the end of the Vietnam War.
The war was escalating and not de-escalating. And I think what really pushed me over the edge was shortly after the invasion of Cambodia, there were 4 students killed at Kent State and 2 more killed at Jackson State. And I'm sorry, I didn't think I'd have this down after all these years. That really pushed me over the edge, that it was time to do more than just protest, than just march with a sign.
To see our interviews with those who broke into the FBI offices in Media, Pennsylvania, you can go to our 2014 shows at democracynow.org. Here in New York, hundreds of workers shut down the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges Friday to demand justice for undocumented workers and others excluded from government pandemic relief funds. Many of the workers deliver essential services in the food industry, cleaning and construction, or have lost their jobs in the pandemic. The proposed Invest in Our New York legislation would raise taxes on wealthy New Yorkers to generate $50 billion for excluded workers, among other things. Meanwhile, immigrant women and domestic workers marched in New Jersey Sunday, calling on Governor Phil Murphy and lawmakers to fund a just recovery for all.
We are essential, but we are also excluded women. We are excluded from all types of relief. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the federal and state governments have failed us. This is unacceptable and cruel.
And millions of women around the world are taking to the streets today to mark this International Women's Day in a year where women have been disproportionately impacted by rising poverty, unemployment, and violence during the pandemic. In the Philippines, hundreds of women led a rally outside the presidential palace in Manila chanting, "Stop killing us." Protesters are demanding the resignation of President Duterte. This is an advocate with the women's rights group, Gabriela.
We would like to underline the fact that we are in a deeper crisis and we are facing a virus far deadlier than COVID. And it is the rotten, anti-people, pro-foreign interest and fascist fascist, macho-fascist presidency and leadership of President Duterte.
In India, thousands of women farmers led hunger strikes and sit-ins at multiple sites on the outskirts of New Delhi, where tens of thousands of farmers have camped out for over 3 months protesting new neoliberal agricultural laws promoted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In Australia, hundreds of workers, from nurses to teachers, gathered outside a government building in Sydney, condemning violence against women and calling for greater gender equality and protections in the workplace. In Mexico, the names of femicide victims were painted on security barriers placed in front of the presidential palace in Mexico City's Zocalo ahead of a massive march today. Over 900 femicides were reported in Mexico last year alone.
We believe that it is important that they are written because the fight is for them. What we want is to ask for justice, for the people to be aware, and for the president who lives here to understand that we are fighting because they are killing us.
In Guatemala City, hundreds of women and girls gathered outside the presidential palace to protest the rising number of femicides. After a march, advocates filled the Constitutional Plaza for a music festival where activists danced and artists painted colorful murals commemorating the victims of femicide. This is one of the protesters.
I dream that women are free from violence, that I can go out on the streets and be at peace, know that I'm going to come back home alive. We want the liberation of women from this patriarchal system.
National Women's Day also marks 4 years since 41 girls were burnt to death inside an orphanage near Guatemala City for protesting sexual and physical violence. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The Quarantine Report. Coming up next, President Biden's facing new calls to close the U.S. military at the military prison at Guantanamo. We'll speak with one of the men held there for more than 14 years, Mohamedou Ould-Slahi, and the woman, the attorney, who fought for his release for years. A new film is based on their story called The Mauritanian. Stay with us.